Hello, everyone, and welcome back to yet another amazing session as part of our virtual campaign called A Tree of Knowledge. And this is a campaign in aid of commemorating of National Arbor Month in South Africa. And as you guys would have seen previously, we are interviewing some phenomenal specialists, young professionals, leaders, activists, international change makers. And today I'm very, very excited to have a dear friend and colleague join us. So today on our show, we have Shade Daniel Harris, who is a scientist by trade. Shade, welcome.
Thank you so much, Margot. Thank you so much for having me.
Great stuff. So we're going to jump straight into the conversation. So Shade, tell us, as a young scientist, what is your take on the status of environmental protection in South Africa right now?
So the current state of the environment, in its entirety, we can see that it has been declining over the years. Remember, the environment is not just the trees, it's not just the rivers, it's not just the forests. It's how these different ecosystems depend on each other and how they perform ecosystem functioning as a whole. Our country has been specifically blessed with such a rich diversity of environments and different habitats within these environments, and each having its own unique ways of handling the various stresses that comes with the different climatic conditions in our country. And even though the environment has been recognized in legislation, unfortunately, we can see that human population and the rapid rates of urbanization is just a bit too demanding on the environment and all that it relies on it, basically. So yeah, we're living in an area where the land available currently in the current status for social development and for economic development, these are the areas that are sensitive to change. So we just need to be mindful of that. And there's a lot of misconceptions that these areas are only along mountainous slopes or within deep valleys, the pretty pictures that people seem to Google. But it's much broader than that. We have unique areas within the metro areas that some people are just not aware of.
Definitely. Shade, you spend a lot of time in the field as a scientist. So just on the top of your head, what are two of the highlights of having a day job that allows you to be one with nature?
Honestly, I can't even pin it to one or two things. I just, honestly, I love being outside, whether it's in my professional capacity or my personal capacity. I love the outdoors. So being a scientist, it allows me to have a lot of time being spent outdoors, getting dirty, roughing it out. I also like driving, so getting to see different passes and driving through them, it can be daunting at times, but it's really fun, and I think I enjoy that the most.
I think for us, especially in the water sector, that's like the one part we love the most, is that our job not only allows us to see all of nature and the environment, but to drive hours on hours just to reach that destination and just take in and just be one with the environment. And I think that's just something for all of us that is a plus working
No,
where we
definitely.
work. And then in your professional opinion, what is the relationship between biodiversity and water? And then is there enough measures being taken to acknowledge the relationship between these two?
Okay, so in my professional opinion, without water, you cannot have a rich biodiversity. And that is a bold statement to be made, but hear me out.
Yeah.
As with everything, we have to look at what are the drivers and responses of any given environment. In an environmental typical frame of thinking, the drivers of an environment is generally your hydrology, which is the flow of water, which is also where the concept, the source to sea principle comes in. And then you also have water quality, which is linked to your hydrology. And lastly, you have your geomorphology, which is the sorting out of your various sediments, sand particles, and stones. and this usually is transported through your watercourses. So basically, the responses of an environment are the things or impacts that take place as a result of these drivers. And these include your habitat and biota. And in any environment, these drivers and responses are very much interlinked. They are dependent on each other, but they're also heavily reliant on water.
Yeah.
So yeah, with this being said, you have to have water to maintain your biodiversity, and this relates to how successful rehabilitation projects are planned and where they're located. It's pointless having a rehabilitation area where you could have the best indigenous trees, but if it's a raised level, how are you going to get water there?
Yeah.
Because without water, you can't sustain that rehabilitated area and the ecosystem that it's now providing. So yeah, when you plan and you manage in relation to how flow is within the landscape, you are guaranteed a successful rehabilitation project. But awareness and education always plays a role in things.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Well,
and
yeah, please go ahead.
no, you just, in terms of your new generations of environmental advocates that are joining the environmental fraternity, it's it's together with ensuring that you are updated with scientific tools and techniques, and in that way relating the environmental education and awareness out there, so that these programs are sustainable and also viable. Over and above this, biodiversity is recognized in law. Biodiversity specifically is recognized under the National Environmental Management Act, that is governed by the Department of Environmental Affairs. And water specifically is governed under the National Water Act, which is governed under the National Department of Water and Sanitation. And interestingly enough, water is the only right for, well, water for the environment and for basic human needs is the only right under the Water Act before water for commercial and industrial use can be allocated. So we are blessed to have that. And some may say that our act is ideal on paper. It's not a practical act.
Yeah.
But I think being in the field, I feel that we can prove the statement wrong. There's still time to do that. We just need more eyes, and that doesn't necessarily mean that it needs to be in a professional manner. It just means that there needs to be an integratedness of communities and schools and different advocates that just can support each other, I think.
Definitely. I'm sorry, I'm playing at the rain and I'm getting excited because obviously our dams
Yeah.
Today I just love how technical you've been in that response, because when I started planning this campaign, and I realized that I had so much different people representing not only different organizations but different professions, I wanted to make sure that the conversation keeps changing and it keeps and the objective of this whole series is to make information as available and freely available as possible, so that people can just get an insight to the technical side of being in the sector and just the insight from our professions. So thank you so much for that. I was actually yesterday was Philip's interview, and I actually said at the end of his interview, I always say that if there's two people that will literally take you to court for wetlands, it's you and Philip. So we're gonna jump a bit onto wetlands because, again, I said yesterday that there's an inside joke to it, and I told everybody that I'll discuss it when I'm interviewing you. So
Okay.
should I actually have a very own personalized hashtag that whenever I see her at the end of a conversation, I just tell hashtag save the wetlands. And it's been like this ongoing inside joke between the two of us for years now. So you advocate very strongly for the protection of wetlands. Just take us through a bit about why is it important, or the importance of wetlands, and how has humanity impacted its functionality and existence overall?
So yeah, no, definitely that Save the Wetlands hashtag has been throughout the years. But a lot of people don't realize that wetlands are actually a type of watercourse.
Yeah.
There are different types of wetlands, and they are also specific within the landscape. So you get them at different locations, and they all have their respective roles in making sure that water is always made available throughout the year, basically. And it is for that very same reason that wetlands are important in maintaining the environment and biodiversity, which allows for other related resources to be available to communities who rely on them. And that's very important. Wetlands are also known to attenuate big flooding events, and these ensure that these big floods are held back and released very slowly downstream. So there's also a safety aspect to it, which people always, sometimes tend to forget. Um, but overall, there are areas within wetlands that are are good. It allows for fertile soils, for planting vegetables for households. It allows for fishing opportunities, both, if there's aliens, we can sure enough have some angling competitions. But there are some communities that rely on fishing for sustenance. So there's that aspect. And there's also the fact that tourism and teaching opportunities are also growing. For example, shout out to the Kailicha Wetlands
Oh yeah.
community. I mean, as you know, there's a group of young men that started up a canoe club just amongst themselves, and then started taking in kids in around the community um, to allow them to engage with wetlands in a different space that they didn't even think of. And it is basically there to reignite the love and the passion, and also this new interface and allowing for this interaction to take place. Um, it's just allowing the platform for different opportunities. There's another shout out that goes to Tanisha Anand.
Yeah.
She's one of the city managers that deals with Princess Flay in the Western Cape, Cape Town. And she ensures that environmental education not only reaches both primary and high schools, but makes sure that communities are well involved in all the activities, whether it's plantings, whether it's cleanups, and it allows for the communities themselves to take hold of their own space. It is a living space. You don't want wetlands to be a dead space that must be fenced off. That is totally not what we're for. The idea is for communities to become passionate and involved so that it can also relate to the management thereof, so that its viability, can be sustained.
Wow. Okay. Like I've worked with Shadai now for like 7 years, and I think I've learned something new about wetlands all over again. And like I said, hashtag save the wetlands is like your thing. Like, yeah, it's never gonna go away. So
No.
that's into your name and your profession. We are celebrating Arbor Week, which is very dear to my heart. I would spend every day planting trees if I could. So just to link the conversation to Arbor Week itself, water is an essential need in order for trees to survive and thrive. How do we balance between water conservation and the continuous need for tree planting, especially just moving out of a drought space that the Western Cape was in?
No, I'm glad that you brought that drought in, because it plays a huge role. Trees of various types, heights, and canopy covers, because as you know, there's different types of canopies within different areas. These are very essential, and without them, a lot of the bird species, animal species, both of various size and uniqueness, would not exist. They are basically the primary producers within the ecosystem. So without them, food won't be able to be generated for many micro and macro organisms. And this relates to both the terrestrial and aquatic areas. This reminds me of the river continuum principle, where without trees, the organic materials that are received from them are not made available to those organisms that cut, collect, and shred these materials for downstream areas. And this actually has a role in water quality. So trees are very essential. especially within the river corridors. But the need to balance water conservation and tree planting needs to take place, obviously. And this is achieved by using indigenous plants, so indigenous trees, that are able to handle the different stresses of varying climatic conditions within our country. As you know, it can be raining one day and scorching hot the next, and we need trees that would be water wise, that are more effective in using water over a longer period of time. Yeah, so like I mentioned earlier on, the locations identified for tree planting is really important as well. You need to ensure that the area is able to receive water, ensuring that these areas being planted are successful. Trees in its entirety, you need to know what the area was historically without any impacts, that when you are planning a rehab project, you are not creating a new environment, you're just re-establishing what was there. And that's very important with the types of trees that are being chosen for that specific area. It may have adverse effects if you choose the wrong type or the wrong species. And the objective of rehab projects, that it's not the intention. But yeah, the trees typically aid in bank stability and recreating areas for refuge, breeding, and just animals need to hunt as well. They need to eat, so it
Yeah.
just creates an area that they feel safe in as well.
Definitely. In case you guys were wondering, we always say that, guys, science is so cool. For those of you that is joining the session a little bit later, we are speaking to Shaddai, who is a scientist. And it's just so amazing to share your technical views and insights to the conversation. But now we would like to get to know you a little bit as a young professional. So, looking back on your journey, what made you choose a career in science?
When I read this question, I found it really funny because it has a very funny story to it. But I've always been drawn to water. I've always been drawn to animals and trying to understand the inter and codependence and just the relationship between it. Um, Another plus was that I really loved swimming when I was younger. So I just had this idea, and I saw marine biologists swimming, and I was like, this is what I'm going to do. And that
I can picture
was,
you as a marine biologist, though, like deep
you know,
diving and just exploring the depths of the oceans. I can see that.
this is where the funny comes in, because for the longest time, I wouldn't know that it was marine biology. I would actually refer to it as marine psychology. So in my mind, I was going to talk to the fish about their
Okay.
problems.
Get them
Yeah, so
through it.
you know,
What's your issue today? Humans keep polluting. I'll walk you through it. It's okay.
I'll walk you through it. The 12-step program.
Yeah, it's acceptance.
Um, but yeah, this life choice was made at a very young age,
Yeah.
and it just fueled my energy and my passion into reading different books and studying rivers and oceans and watching documentaries, and even visiting beaches and the aquarium. Up till today, I get so excited just to go to the aquarium because it's just a place where I find joy.
And that's also the place where your husband proposed. Let's not forget.
that's, that's very true. Yeah, so this all played a part in choosing my subjects during high school. It was an easy choice for me because I really knew what I wanted to do. And yeah, over and above that, my family was really supportive. They told me to go for it and achieve my dreams, because the only person that would limit me would be myself.
Definitely.
Yeah, so I had fun. I'm not a practicing marine biologist, but I have studied marine biology. But I'm a freshwater biologist now, so the only difference is the water's less salty.
And today, I think personally, in my view, science and engineering and just the environmental sector used to be a very male predominant environment in terms
Mm.
of profession. So
Yeah,
I would like to ask, I mean, you are a young professional, you are a woman in the field. It's obviously not been easy. It's had its moments. So,
definitely.
so how do we just continue encouraging and making our young academics and graduates more aware of getting involved in the environmental and water sector?
Yeah, no, definitely. It is a big challenge, but I I can only say approach it as a person. Gender right now is not a major priority. It's more the advocacy of the environment. So I don't go in there as, I'm Shade the female and
Yeah.
I'm going to be the submissive. No, I'm there. I'm there on behalf of the environment, and that's where I will stand on. And personally, I've been involved in various orientation weeks at my university where I get up and I showcase what I've been doing at work to prospecting science students. So that also allows a different platform for them to be opened to, because there's different aspects in the environmental sector. As you know, we have statisticians, we have GIS specialists, we have environmental lawyers, and a lot of the people only think that being in the environmental sector, you either just in the lab or you're busy doing running models, and that's not the case. I mean, you can have that option if you want to, but there's a lot of professions within the environmental sector where you get to do everything. I mean, we are one of those examples. So yeah, we deal with everything, and I like showcasing the various aspects, especially the fact that we get to test these up and coming scientific tools and techniques that need to be tested within the environment.
Yeah.
Yeah, besides that, I also assist with science camps where the subjects are related to water and the environment. And it's also another opportunity for, tertiary students to be better engaged with the environment, because you're not only having this situation where you are just fed the theory,
Yeah.
you are actually in the field and looking about what you are studying. And that is, I think that's crucial as well, because you get that one-on-one contact. So as you can hear, the environmental education and awareness in this regard, exposing both primary and high school learners, opens up many opportunities that they themselves are not aware of, and
Yeah.
that's really important. There's also a cool exercise that I'm a part of that should have started this year, so hopefully it's going to start soon. We would be hosting our water-related forums, our meetings at universities.
Oh,
So
wow.
this allows both undergrads and postgraduates to not only come and listen, but engage with public servants and private consultants.
And you,
Um,
sorry to break your words, you are a board member of the South African Wetland Society as well.
that's correct. Yeah. So we want to ensure that all platforms available can be used to expose the environmental sector. We want to break the cycle of it's just lab work or it's just sitting behind your table reading reports, there are some days where that happens, but most of the time you're out there in it, getting your hands dirty, and that's what we want people to know. Sometimes our communication and our packaging of information needs to be more relatable
Yeah.
to everybody. Yeah.
Definitely. And the very last question, just to end off this very technical, informative, amazing session with you, Shadai. As a young professional and someone that strongly advocates for environmental protection, in your opinion, what does 2030 look like in terms of just availability of natural resources and the environment at large?
The greenie in me is saying, you know, it's diminishing, it's declining really fast. But in my professional opinion, we are basically at a place where we are relying too much on technology.
Yeah.
or technological independence or intervening within the natural sphere. And I think that we need to focus more on natural-based solutions. We still have time to, sorry, we still have time to ensure the sustainable use and the viability of our environments. But it needs to be planned properly. The environment needs to be considered. It cannot be an afterthought. And like I said, I feel like we still have time to ensure that our dependence on natural-based solutions become more active, an active role in what we do. The more we rely on the use of technology intervening, especially when it comes to hard-based interventions with gabions and weirs, we tend to forget that that has a knock-on effect on rivers, and we need to make sure that these resources are readily available to all, not just to certain areas within a reach. So I'm basically saying that we are on the decline, but there is still hope. We can still get to a place where we find that balance.
Definitely. Shade, thank you so much for such an informative and, like I said, just an incredible conversation. I really hope that, in 10 years' time, someone messages us and say, I saw this interview and I was so inspired, and I'm an engineer now, or I'm a scientist now, or I'm a marine biologist now. Because that's just really the objective of, hosting such sessions. So thank you so much to everybody that has joined us today. Once again, to the beautiful, incredible Shade Daniel Harris, who is a scientist by trade. Thank you so much for offering up your time and for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for the opportunity. So #save wetlands.